This is a boat, as you can probably tell. More specifically, a canoe. A severe downgrade compared to the King of Red Lions and Wind Waker. During the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, you'll find yourself in one of these wooden vessels at some point. Areas of note include the fishing hole or traveling down the upper Zor River. Actually, that might be it, unless I'm forgetting. But today, I want to focus on Twilight Princess's most chill form of transportation, and the areas it's normally bound to, by breaking them in ways you're not intended to, and then taking the canoe to some rather extreme places. I'm getting Super Mario Sunshine vibes from this one. Three's a crowd, Zelda. In Ocarina of Time, I kind of got obsessed at one point with fishing in areas you normally can't fish in, given you can only fish in a small pond in that game. And that led to some humorous situations. Twilight Princess is a different story though, and the restriction actually comes in the form of the canoe. So I hope you enjoyed this bizarre, hyper-fixated adventure about a dumb wooden boat. So let's start with the fishing hole. So when you enter this area, you have this pond in front of you, and you have this little shack off to the left. Going inside, we're gonna find Henna, the shopkeeper. And to immediately start breaking things, this area inside the shop, the interior, is a separate map. So outside the window, you can see the entire fishing hole still, but none of this area actually has collision. So if you were to try to go out into it, you're going to fall to your death. Now what's interesting is that there is a death barrier below this map. However, there is also a platform down here below the shop. So if you were to fall beneath the shop, there is this big rectangle that you can walk around on that is above the death barrier. So you won't die if you're down here. You just get stuck in a land of shadow. Anyways, going back up into the shop, we can kind of walk through some objects, including the fish tank and some other things. We can also get really uncomfortably close to Henna, and we cannot talk to her from behind the shop counter. If you wait here long enough, she does have an itching issue, similar to the shopkeeper in Ocarina of Time who runs the fishing hole there. But anyways, we'll head outside and get our canoe now, but I just want to point out that there is a liminal space behind the door that does have collision. It boxes Link in, and you get stuck in here, but it is so that Link doesn't fall after his door animation when he exits the shop. Now here we are, finally on our boat with Henna. And it looks like there's room for one more, so I tried to spawn Zelda in to see how she would react with the boat. And at first I was like, holy crap, she sat perfectly on the boat. There are now 3 of us on the boat, and now she has her bow out, ready to fish in a different way. But as you can see, unfortunately, if we move the boat, Zelda just kind of floats. She normally gets tethered to Epona, so that when you fight Ganondorf at the end of the game, she falls along. But without a horse, yeah, she just defies gravity. And so she's gonna float there as we kind of paddle around. And at this point, I want to see what would happen while in a canoe if you got attacked by an enemy. Because normally, at least from what I remember, that doesn't happen. So I tried spawning in one of those little ice dudes, and they unfortunately fell to the bottom of the lake and couldn't reach me. And I was having a lot of trouble trying to get other monsters to spawn here. Like the second I would try to load them in, the game would crash. Perfect. But that's okay because we have some other Links who are gonna help out. And so Link is now in the boat with Henna, and we have our Links on shore, and this one's getting very feisty with the ball and chain. So the ball and chain can hit Link, and as you can see, there's not really an animation for when he takes damage. And so we're gonna keep doing this over and over again until Link eventually dies. And what's kind of funny is that when Link dies, he just sort of immediately falls out of the boat and starts drowning. I guess there isn't a dead in the canoe state for this character. So yeah, it just warps to the drowning animation, except it's a little funky because there's a floating hand that's just like right here. Can you see that? So while the drowning animation is taking place, this hand is stuck here, and I'm not sure why, but it's kind of funny. Also, in case you're curious, if Link is in the boat with Henna, and we have another Link try to board the boat, it will not allow us. The boat is already in use, so the option to climb aboard does not happen. Now, before we explore this area, this fishing hole, I wanted to see what would happen if I tried to take Henna and the boat out of here. So we go to the Twilight Realm in Lake Hylia, and first I spawn the boat. The canoe works as it should. But then I tried to spawn in Henna behind me, and she didn't like that. And at this point, I was thinking I made a mistake, and I accidentally spawned in her static model with just a T-pose. But then I realized she could still look at me. Her body was frozen, and she had this default expression. She was kind of like a scarecrow, just like basically like tacked to a post. And her head would actually follow my movement. She wouldn't blink, she wouldn't speak, she just stared endlessly, deep through my soul. and this started to feel like a creepypasta with the eerie Twilight theme and music. But during this, I figured I'd take a canoe and put it on land and see if that worked. And it does work, kinda. I mean, I can get in it and row around, but boats don't work on land. Go figure. They always have their floating animation though, which is kinda neat. Spawning another henna in to hopefully resolve my issue results in the same issue, and she looks down at me in desperation. She has a mouth and cannot scream. And just then I wake up from my fever dream as Henna tells me better luck next time. Now, there's a lot more I want to try with the canoe, but let's focus on this fishing hole area first. I always wanted to explore this area and go out of bounds and climb these hills and stuff, and now we can. So this whole area, there's lots of hills, ledges, and all sorts of other things, and it looks like a super cool, lush, flooded canyon. So let's get to some places we normally can't. Starting off, let's get on top of the fishing shack. So you can walk around the roof up here, but the signs up here do lack collision. Now normally you can't get up here because the claw shot won't pull you up here, but like I said, we can walk around. Now from the shack, we can go over to the ridge, and as you can see, the ridge here does have collision, and you can walk on it. However, beyond this line, you'll fall. And you can see this line because the developers actually swapped to a lower resolution texture out here. Now as we move forward over here, we can walk out onto this hill. Now as we move, you're going to see there's an invisible wall I keep bumping into that's preventing us from going further out. However, we can walk down this protrusion to a cool spot. Now, not all the areas here like this have collision, but there are a few that do. And as we move around, you'll see that these trees right here do not have any collision, and we can walk right through them. And we can follow this ridge around to this next section here, but that's as far as we can get without jumping up. But unfortunately, up above has no collision. Now, going back to those invisible walls again along that ridge that we just walked by, if we try to get over that invisible wall, we're going to fall through the ground and into the water. And so we can swim in this out of bounds water, and it's kind of trippy looking out here because we can see this mirror world beneath us. So the game developers took the above ground and flipped it upside down and had a direct reflection underneath the level. And this creates the illusion of a reflection because actual real-time water reflections would be super taxing for the game. So yeah, it's kind of neat swimming in this mirror world. Speaking of water though, we can also take a hike under the dock as the area beneath it is walkable. Now like I was saying, a lot of these areas that I want to visit aren't walkable at all, which is unfortunate. All these big hills can't be stood on, which is a total bummer because I would have loved to have sat up here and looked out over the level when I was a kid. On the other side of the level, we do have a similar situation as before, except these trees do have collision. The clouder for the ground doesn't match up though, and of course, there's an invisible wall too. Up here is another lookout point, and we can follow this along. Honestly, this side is a lot easier to explore. Above this, at the highest peak, is unfortunately a no-go. Well, right now that is. Hold that thought. It is possible to sink forever into the abyss here, so if we were to go out of bounds and throw on some iron boots, we can fall below the mirror world and keep falling forever. Because we are swimming, we somehow missed the death barrier. Or at least, I think that's what happened. But yeah, this goes on forever, I think. I'm way below the level right now. So far down that the world above me was called out by the draw distance to the game. It's kind of spooky down here in the abyss. Anyways, let's get back to boats and some handstands. Gotta stay limber. Oh yeah, and if you were to get interrupted during the item obtaining state, we can actually walk around with the item floating in front of us. Now Wind Waker was like this too, but as you can see, we have this really cool floating heart. So now I have some more testing to do in this canoe, and in particular, actually fishing, because I haven't done that yet. So we kidnap Henna and put her in our canoe, and then stick the canoe on top of the biggest hill here. Glorious! The highest peak doesn't have collision, like I said, but this canoe does not care. So now that we're all up here alone, Henna, in this canoe, just the two of us, how about some fishing? You know, fishing from up here is quite the drop. And I honestly didn't know whether I'd be able to retrieve a fish or not. A fish instantly bites, and let's go, and Henna then comforts me from the Mile High Club with some expert advice. Link kinda looks like his world just shattered though. As the saying never goes, second time's a charm. We fish on as we snag a sucker, and all I can see is the ground. So I pull and pray, and I land the fish. Henna is easily impressed by my 25-inch Ordon catfish, but like a savage, I just drop it off the cliff. I don't think it even made it back into the water. Whoops. Anyways, I really didn't think about how it's going to get us down from here, so we might be stuck on this hill for a while. There we go. Not quite the landing I was hoping for, but we'll take it. My boy's got a strong neck. But fishing while upside down is very trippy. It looks very silly too, or maybe that's because I'm trying to row on solid ground. Who knows? But what if we sunk the canoe? Well, placing the canoe underwater actually allows Link to get out of it. This was kind of surprising to me. Henna is down there drowning with a smile, but we can get out of a boat that normally you can't get out of due to having her as a guide. I throw on some iron boots and my Zora tunic to check out the sunken ship, but I can't get inside. However, if we make the ship float again, we are able to board this version of the craft rather quickly. And it immediately starts the menu dialogue choices that would appear if we try to get out of the boat on our own. Anyways, if you're in the boat with Henna and Thanos snapped the boat, Henna will actually rotate around and sit right next to you. She's gonna make Link blush. You can't move or anything, and there are no oars to row with, so all we can do is drop out of this glitched player state into the water below. Henna will keep, defying gravity. I wasn't able to talk to her again either. But now it's time to take this boat on the road. So taking this canoe to the Ordon Spring area, it will float. So as you can see here, it's floating. However, we cannot row here. The water is too shallow, so we're kind of stuck. But if we move the boat to, say, Ordon Village, in that river there, we can totally paddle away. And the canoe is completely functional here. Makes me wish I had one. Now, in case you're curious, if we take this boat up to a house and we're still inside the boat, we cannot open a door while we're in the boat, which is quite unfortunate. But normal water is a bit boring, if I'm being honest. How about we ride in something a little hotter? Ah, that's much better. So lava has kind of changed in the 3D Zeldas. There's some instances where you would land on it and you would just take constant damage as you could walk, and there are other times where you would just fade out to your death. But lava in this game behaves just like water, because surprise, surprise, it's actually water. Now I know if Link jumps into the lava, we can see him quite literally melting here, and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have this as well. And because it is water, our superb wooden boat is not going to burn. We can float just fine, although I might have a leak here. Now the boat we've been using throughout this video is the 2-seater fishing canoe, by the way. We'll talk about the other versions very soon. Now I say that because we can of course fish here, but this lava currently doesn't have any fish. So we're just gonna snap our fingers and presto. Now there's fireproof fish. Look at them all swimming in the abyss. Now like I was saying, this lava behaves just like normal water. It just has a destructive layer on top for enemies and Link. And so we can fish here because the fish won't die in the lava. And it leads to quite an interesting visual as we reel one in. Definitely quite a rare sight to behold. So we're gonna come back to Lava Land in just a second, but first I wanna talk about Gibdos. So Gibdos have this ability where they shriek at you and make you pee your pants. And during that process, when you are frozen in terror, they then usually hit you with their sword. But how does the power of the canoe hold up against the power of the Gibdo? Well, as you can see, the status effect no longer affects Link. This thing can keep screaming at us, and we don't care because we're in a boat. Funny enough, we also have super armor because the attacks will cause damage, but we will not flinch. So the boat protects us in multiple ways. But now I want to talk about dogs. Yes, dogs. In areas dogs should not be. Now this was discovered a few years back by Zen64, and it's a canoe feature that you cannot encounter in normal gameplay. Canoeing by a dog lets a dog ride your canoe up front, which is super dope. But in order to understand dog canoes, first we need to talk about the parallel canoeiverse. Not all canoes are made equal, and in fact, there are several different kinds. There's the standard 2-seater, designed to accompany a lovely lady. Then there's the solo tackle box single-seater, a prestigious model you can find in any of your local Cabela's. I wonder how many of you are going to get Cabela kayak and fishing ads on YouTube now after hearing that. This one is for solo pond fishing. Then we have the standard issue single-person rower, used for shooting the rapids down the upper Zora River. You'll normally find this canoe right here. Trying to access this canoe without starting the minigame doesn't work, as you'll sit in the boat and it won't move at all. Unglorious! But it's this unglorious canoe that we need. Dogs don't seem to like the 2-seater where Link sits up front, and they don't like the one with the tackle box either. You can't even manually place the dogs in these other boats because they're just too excited and flop out. Okay, gonna point this out now before PETA gets here, but dogs are immune to lava. I mean, Zelda dogs. Don't try this with your dog. So if we take these dogs down onto this hot pipe by the lava here and don't die, we can then stroll up in our canoe. If the dogs fall into the lava, they will just swim in it, tick-eating the damage cycle. But if we get near the edge, one dog will jump onto our boat. which is amazing. Now, something that wasn't documented when this was first discovered was that you can have more than one dog on this thing. In fact, I think you can have infinite as long as they can make the jump. Look at that, our pup is now a Cerberus. Jumping back is a different issue though, as while on the boat they can overlap, but upon landing they get pushed by each other's colliders. So some dogs fall in the lava. And look, PETA's here, oh my! They took my boat and my dog. It turns out if you unload your boat, your dog goes with it, but it will warp your dog to the next available boat. Cats don't like boats unfortunately, but they can swim in lava too. Cats are kind of funny though, because they seem to have a farther jump back onto land than dogs. And if they can't calculate the jump to this pipe, they instead jump straight down to the death barrier. They just go into turkey pose, as they defy death, not even using one of their 9 lives. Unfortunately, Link still can't survive the temperature of a lady's average bathwater and evaporates. And speaking of evaporation, as a bonus fact, not related to boats directly, if you remove the water from Zora's River that you normally canoe through, it turns into a giant slide. Link slips on every surface here, and it's quite bizarre if I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you even get stuck in an infinite slide against a wall, which looks very goofy. And that is a bunch of explosive, mildly interesting canoe discoveries you never asked for in Twilight Princess. I hope you enjoyed this video, subscribe now, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers!